You need to have research and data to support what you're saying. I fear that it is going to be like one of my favorite books of the year. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monzi if you are new here, and I'm so pumped about today's video because for the very first time, I'm gonna be participating in Nonfiction November. If you don't know what this is a month-long reading initiative that is hosted by the Book Olive here on YouTube. She's been doing this for the last 10 years, I believe, and she has said that this is gonna be her final year of doing it. So I really wanted to hop on board. I'm gonna link her videos down below that go in depth into explaining what Nonfiction November really is, but to summarize it very briefly, she is just trying to encourage more people to read an overlooked genre, nonfiction. So depending on the person, that could mean just reading one nonfiction book in the month of November, or it could mean reading exclusively nonfiction in the month of November. The point is that you just read more nonfiction than you typically would. So I looked at my reading history, and the max number of nonfiction books that I've read in a single month is 2. So I'm gonna try my hardest to read 3 nonfiction books during this month. It is already November 5th and I haven't started yet, so I have 25 days to read 3 books, and I think that I can do it if I really push myself. It just takes me a little bit longer to read nonfiction, like most people, I would think. And yeah, I'm just gonna vlog the entire process. So this video is gonna take place over the span of the entire month of November, unless I finish these books super quickly, which I really don't anticipate will be happening. Something that the Book Olive does every time she hosts Nonfiction November is she creates a list of 4 prompts that you can kind of match your books to if you want a little bit more of a challenge, or if you need some inspiration. You don't have to do that, but it is a little bit of a fun twist. I was able to find 3 books that I've been wanting to read already that actually match 3 of her word prompts, so I will be doing that for this challenge. The 4 words that she has selected for this year's Nonfiction November are code, path, shot, and join. So let me go over the 3 books that I have selected. I am so excited. The first book is really on the nose, and it's for the word code, and the book that I have chosen is Chip War by Chris Miller. This is my boyfriend's book, and he has been trying to convince me to read it. He is a newly minted software engineer, so he is very well versed with the tech world. I, however, am not, but he says that this book is very accessible, and so I'm gonna give it a shot. A short description on the back of the book to give you an idea of what this is about. It says, an epic account of the decades-long battle to control the world's most critical resource, microchip technology, with the West and China increasingly in conflict. This also has a sticker on here that says that it won Business Book of the Year in 2022. So we'll see how I enjoy this. The next book that I have is for the word path, and that is The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown. I stumbled upon this in a little free library a few weeks ago, and I was so stoked because I have some really close friends of mine that absolutely adore this book and have been trying to convince me to read it. So now I have the perfect opportunity to actually do that. This is about a rowing team, and it says on the front cover, 9 Americans in their epic quest for gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. The word quest, I feel like, perfectly goes with path or journey. It is this team's journey to the Olympics that I will be reading about. Apparently this book is incredibly moving, and I've heard that it brings people to tears. And I've only ever cried when reading memoirs. I've never cried while reading a nonfiction. So I'm really curious to see what this book does to me. The third and final book that I have chosen for this challenge is a book that matches the word shot. When the Book Olive talks about all the different ways that you can incorporate shot into a book, she does mention medicine, as in like an injection, like a medical injection. And so I kind of went with that, and I picked Outlive by Attia. I had talked about this book in my nonfiction TBR video that I did back in May. And so this book was already on my radar, and I feel like, again, this is just the perfect chance for me to pick it up finally. This is a very health-focused book. I think he gives us really practical tips on how to increase our lifespan and longevity and just be healthier, happier humans. I don't have this book in my possession, but I do have Spotify Premium, and I looked it up, and this book is on audiobook, and so I can read 15 hours of it for free through Spotify. And then I'm pretty sure that my boyfriend has this downloaded onto his Kindle, and if not, I've already requested a physical copy through the library. So I'm hoping that by the time I get to those last 2 hours of the audiobook, I will have either an ebook or a physical book version to continue with. And so that is my little nonfiction TBR for this video. Like I already mentioned, I'm really excited about this. I think it's gonna be fun to challenge myself to read a little bit more nonfiction. I wanted to read more nonfiction anyway this year, so this is just perfect. The book that I think I am going to start with is The Boys in the Boat, because it's the book that I've been wanting to read for the longest amount of time, the book that I've known about for the longest period of time. So yeah, I'm just really eager to get into it. I'm gonna start on this now, and I will talk to you when I have just a firmer grasp of what this book is actually about. I'm obsessed. I'm well and truly obsessed with this book. I fear that it is going to be like one of my favorite books of the year. And I'm only 2 chapters in, so I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but so far I am loving it. The writing in and of itself is just like impeccable, superb, magnificent. It's everything that I could ever want. It's perfectly descriptive, but it's not overly flowery. I can feel and hear and see everything that the author is putting down on the page. And I love it. I love it. So basically, the story of this rowing team is being told through the life of Joe Rance, who is one of the 9 members on this freshman team. We learn in the prologue that the daughter of Joe Rance is the neighbor of our author, which is kind of like how this book came to be. So in the first chapter, it's 1933. We're deep in the Depression. The author is really setting the scene for how like dire the situation is for everyone. We're on the University of Washington campus, and we get introduced to the rowing team, the head coach, the freshman coach. It's the start of the year, and all the freshman boys are gathering at the rowing house to try out for the team. And we're getting all of this context for the story, such as the University of Washington is the rivalry of the University of California, Berkeley, and these Western teams are kind of the underdogs out of all of the rowing teams in the United States. They never seem to be able to stand up to the Eastern Ivy League schools, Harvard, Cornell, Dartmouth, etc. And it is the deep desire of the head coach of the University of Washington's team to have the team not only make it to the Olympics, but to win gold at the Olympics. So that's the setup for the story. And then in chapter 2, we kind of go back in history and we learn more about Joe Rance in particular and his upbringing, his very rough childhood upbringing. And it reads just like historical fiction, which is my favorite genre of book to read. I haven't read a historical fiction book in a while, but I still think of it in my heart as like my all-time favorite genre. So that also might be why I am loving this so much. It's a really nice day out today. It's like in the high 60s, so I think I'm gonna go read out on my little balcony. But first, I'm gonna make some tea and then we can go outside together. when an author is able to make me care deeply about any niche topic, but specifically a sport that I had zero interest in prior, that's talent. That is talent. I'm on chapter 12, which is a little over halfway through the book, and I feel exactly the same way that I did the last time I updated you. If anything, I'm a little bit more infatuated with this book. I've been reading it for the last 4 or 5 days, and anytime I'm not actively in it, I'm thinking about it. It's just a truly, truly remarkable story. So I had already told you about how we're following the University of Washington's rowing team, and specifically we're getting a deeper look into the life of Joe Rance. And this is all leading up to the 1936 Berlin Olympics, right? So we're also getting this broader historical context and learning about Germany during this time, Hitler's rise to power, and his motivations going into the preparations for his country to host this worldwide event as the Holocaust is actively occurring, which just adds another layer of complexity to this story that makes it such a gripping read. I have nothing better to do today than read this book. I have about 160 pages left in it, so I'm just gonna make my way through, have an amazing day reading this book that I love, and the next time that I update you, hopefully I will be done with it and I can share my final thoughts. I just finished The Boys in the Boat, and I think it's going to be really hard for me to adequately articulate what this book meant to me. I feel like if I had a little bit more time to sit with it, then I could do it more justice, but I'm just going to do my best. This is one of the best books that I have ever read. It is a beautiful portrait of so many different values, the importance of teamwork, passion, community, grit. Each of these 9 American boys had so many challenges to face in their personal lives, and they took those life lessons and applied it to their sport in order to achieve something that was so massive and seemingly insurmountable. And they did it. And they freaking did it. I never outright cried when I read this, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't deeply moved, because I was. It was so touching and heartwarming to see the camaraderie and the unity amongst this team. I love stories like this. I love seeing a group of people come together to realize a shared dream, a shared vision. There's just something about it. So 6 stars. This book is a 6-star book for me. I've rated other books 5 stars this year, and this one just surpasses those by a landslide. It's gonna be a story that sticks with me for a really, really long time. I am kind of sad to be parting ways with it, but I do have to move on. So my next book that I'm gonna pick up is Outlive. I was able to secure a physical copy through the library. This copy is massive. It's very wide. If you look at a normal book, it's just has a lot of width to it. It almost looks like a textbook, a little bit intimidating, but I have been listening to the audiobook version on Spotify periodically throughout the week. I think I'm on chapter 6 in the audiobook, so that's 88 pages through the physical copy, and I think it's 411 pages long. Today is Sunday, which is kind of like my reset day for the week, where I get a lot of errands out of the way. So I'm going to be deep cleaning my apartment, vacuuming, wiping down all the surfaces, things like that. And then after that, I need to go on a 7-mile run. that I can't skip out on because I signed up for a 14-mile race in January, so I really need to do my longer training runs. But the good thing is that I can listen to my book while I do all of those things. So that's what I'm gonna do, and then maybe later tonight I'll actually dive into the physical copy. I don't have too much to say about the book yet. We're still kind of in the stage where the author's laying the foundation for the rest of the book. So I think I'm gonna wait to tell you my more like in-depth thoughts, but I am liking it. I am definitely liking it. Okay, let's go vacuum. Hi there, I am done with my Sunday tasks, so I'm here to finally give you an initial update on Peter Attia's Outlive. I got to chapter 9 in the audiobook, which is 176 pages into the physical copy, so almost halfway, not quite, but almost. And I am enjoying this, I really am. I wouldn't say that I'm loving it, but it's a nice read. It's very informative. So in the first couple of chapters, Peter Attia kind of lays out his purpose in writing this book, and it's to show people how to live better for longer. So the first thing that he does is he distinguishes between lifespan and health span. Lifespan is the number of years that you live. Health span is the number of years that you live disease-free. And then Peter Attia takes it one step further and adds on to that definition of health span by saying he wants to show people how not only to live disease-free, but to improve and maintain their cognitive and physical function as they age. And that's something that really resonates with me and aligns with my philosophy as a healthcare provider, because it's focusing on preventative care rather than secondary or tertiary care. So I'm a physical therapist. When someone comes to see me, usually they've been injured, they hurt themselves, they fell, something like that, and then they're seeking out help from me. But with every single patient I see, even though I'm providing them with secondary care, I'm always equipping them with the knowledge for how to prevent these situations down the line. It's something that's really, really important to me. Fun fact, not really a fun fact, but something that I tell almost every single person that I see in the clinic. Once you hit the age of 30, for every single decade of your life moving forward, you automatically lose 3 to 8% of your muscle mass, unless you do something to counteract it, which would be strength training. I'm a huge advocate for strength training, so I'm really curious what Peter Attia is gonna say in his exercise chapter, but I have a strong feeling that he's going to agree with me. I love his approach to health and encouraging and educating people on how to take charge of their own lives and have some agency in their own well-being. What's the point in reaching the age of 100 if you can't do what you want to do physically, if you don't feel good in your body, if you don't have your mental faculties intact? What good is there in that? So I really do love the aim of this book. I will say that he's taking a little bit of a long time to get to the point, or to get to the useful practical tips that people can leave this book with. I think that's mostly going to happen in part 3, which is not for another 2 chapters or something like that. And I still enjoyed parts 1 and 2. I thought that they were really informative and interesting, but I picked this book up to read part 3 because I feel like that's the good stuff. That's the stuff that I can apply to my own life, and that's the stuff that I can also teach to my patients. In part 3, he's going to cover exercise, nutrition, sleep, and emotional health. And I do feel like I'm going to know a lot of the information that he presents in those chapters, but I do think it's going to be a really good refresher for me. So I am genuinely looking forward to reading those. I'm gonna sit down with this physical copy for the next hour before I go to bed, and then probably just pick it up throughout the week. And I don't know if I'll update you before I get to the end or if I'll give you another like midway update. We'll just have to see if I have anything to say. So I will talk to you when I talk to you. Okay, so I have to give you a midway update because I have been on a roller coaster ride with this book, and I just have to talk about it. So parts 1 and 2 of the book I enjoyed. I think that they could have been condensed down a little bit, and I think that they would act as a barrier to a lot of people to get to part 3 of the book, which is where all of the really useful information lies. So up until I got to part 3, I think I would have rated this book a 3.5 to 4 stars. I just finished the first 4 chapters in part 3, which are all devoted to exercise. And I just want to preface everything that I'm about to say with, again, this is my area of expertise. I'm a physical therapist. I know a lot about exercise. Of course, I'm always going to be learning more, but I do have a strong understanding and a strong foundation in exercise principles. So I was really looking forward to reading these chapters in the book. I've been waiting for this. So the first chapter on exercise is titled Exercise, the Most Powerful Longevity Drug. I thought that this chapter was stellar. I want pretty much everyone to read it. I think that there's some really, really great stuff in here. I'm just gonna read you one quote. More than any other tactical domain we will discuss in this book, exercise has the greatest power to determine how you will live out the rest of your life. There are reams of data supporting the notion that even a fairly minimal amount of exercise can lengthen your life by several years. It delays the onset of chronic disease pretty much across the board, but it is also amazingly effective at extending and improving health span. So this chapter basically just expands on that one little section that I just read out, explaining the importance of exercise. Another little stat for you: if you don't exercise at all, you spend 0 minutes a week exercising. If you just increase that to 90 minutes per week of moving your body, you can reduce your risk from dying from all causes by 14%. Just 0 to 90 minutes. And of course, the benefits are greater the more you exercise past that 90-minute mark. But yeah, for anyone out there who doesn't exercise at all, I want to emphasize that you only have to increase your exercise quantity to 90 minutes to reap huge benefits. Okay, so that chapter, great. I loved it. The next chapter is called Training 101. And basically this whole chapter talks about the different forms of exercise and how they each contribute to different aspects of health. I would say that I liked about 90% of this chapter, and I even gained something from it. I exercise pretty regularly, but I realized through reading this chapter that I haven't been incorporating enough high intensity cardio into my weekly regimen. That's something that I'm going to start doing, so I appreciate Peter Attia drawing my attention to that. The only part in this chapter that I didn't love is he repeatedly talks about how vulnerable the spine is. And again, as a PT, when people come and see me for back pain, something that I work on a lot with them is building their confidence in their spine and teaching them that their spine is resilient, because when you view your spine as weak and vulnerable, you obviously don't want to use it as much, and so you're very fearful of using your spine and performing movements that use your spine. And there's a large body of research to show that fear avoidant behaviors are heavily linked to back pain. So I do not subscribe to the notion that your spine is vulnerable and weak and extra prone to injury. Back pain is really complicated. It's multifactorial. There are a number of reasons why people experience back pain, and it is not just as simple as, oh, your spine is weak and you shouldn't use it, and that's going to result in injury. So I digress, but I didn't love that part of the chapter. And then we move into chapter 13, titled The Gospel of Stability, Relearning How to Move to Prevent Injury. This is where everything went downhill. I went on a heavy rant about this chapter to my boyfriend this morning. He had to sit there and listen to me talk about it for 20 minutes without even like taking a breath. I was so irritated by this chapter. But I'm going to try really hard not to get too into the weeds of it and just broadly explain my frustration with what Peter Attia is saying in this chapter. Basically, he is emphasizing the importance of stability and how stability is the key to preventing injury. He highly promotes two schools of thought within the physical therapy realm. The first one is DNS, or dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, and the other one is PRI, the Postural Restoration Institute. Both of these strategies that he is encouraging people to seek out have very, very low quality evidence to support their claims. So I take issue with that. I'm not mad that most of what he says in this chapter I disagree with. I wouldn't mind that if it was supported by evidence, but it's not. And he speaks about it with such authority and such confidence. A lot of what he says in here about DNS and PRI is that they are fixing dysfunctions in your body before you even have pain or injury. And again, it's just something that I don't believe in. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not gonna take a person who's not in any pain and point out everything that's wrong with their body and then tell them to fix it, because there's no right way for your body to be structured. We're all asymmetrical, we're all individuals. There's no like perfect skeletal structure. And I just think that there's a lot of misinformation in here. So this chapter really, really grinded my gears. He really emphasizes the importance of learning how to breathe as if we all don't breathe automatically, and the importance of learning how to control our feet, and says that when people come to his clinic, he makes them learn these basic principles of how to breathe and how to feel their feet for 6 months before he lets them lift weights. Whereas in the chapter before, he talks about the importance of strength training. Why are you going to make people wait 6 months before they pick up weights? That doesn't make any sense. I feel like that's doing them a huge disservice. So anyway, there's a bunch of things that I didn't like about this chapter. This chapter was a 0 out of 5 stars for me, and I just don't know how this one chapter is going to impact my overall rating of the book, because there's so much other good information at the start of the book and in the first 2 parts of the book that I want people to know about and that I want people to read. I'm just feeling really, really conflicted because I deeply, deeply disliked chapter 13. There was just something very cultish about it too. Like, you know, when someone is titling a chapter the gospel of whatever, they just don't have an objective view of what they're talking about, because it's become something of a religion to them. And yeah, just everything that he purports in this chapter is based in anecdotal evidence. It's rooted in his specific case and how it made him feel. But again, the literature doesn't support any of it. And it's such a shame, because I feel like he has done a great job of citing sources and reporting on statistics up until this point. And so now I'm going to go into the chapters on nutrition, sleep, and emotional health with a little bit of caution, because I just don't know. This book is supposed to be about the science and art of longevity. You can't use anecdotal evidence then. You need to have research and data to support what you're saying. That's how I feel about it. So we will see how I feel about the upcoming chapters. I'm going into the nutrition chapter right now. This is something that I am not specialized in, so I don't know. I don't know if I should believe what he's telling me. Now I'm just nervous. Anyway, that's my little rant about the exercise portion of this book. I don't know if any of that made sense, because I felt like my thoughts were just being pulled in a bunch of different directions. And I'm sorry if that was really boring for you to listen to, but I just felt like I needed to get it off my chest. I think I'm just gonna finish this book right here, right now, and I will talk to you after. I finished Outlive. It's been a few days since I finished it. I was kind of collecting my thoughts on the book. I have very mixed feelings on this book. This one is a really, really hard one for me to rate. Since I last updated you, I read the chapters on nutrition, sleep, and emotional health. The sleep chapter I actually really liked. I thought there was a lot of valuable information in it. A lot of it was review for me, but I think other people could really benefit from reading that chapter. The emotional health chapter felt a little bit out of place. It was centered around Peter Attia's personal journey with mental health rather than the science surrounding mental health. I really enjoyed reading it, but I don't feel like it fit in with the rest of the book. And then the nutrition chapter. I was kind of baffled by the beginning of the nutrition chapter because he goes extensively into the research on nutrition, which he conveniently didn't do with the previous chapter on stabilization that I took huge issue with. And then he critiques people on being very dogmatic in their views on specific diets when he, again, in the previous chapter, took an overly assertive stance on like a very niche exercise approach that isn't research backed. So that makes me feel like he was just kind of picking and choosing what research supported his beliefs, confirmation bias throughout the whole book, and I can't really trust everything that he says. In the nutrition chapter, I also didn't love his overemphasis, his hyperfixation on caloric restriction. Like, yes, there are people that could benefit from eating less, but to make a sweeping generalization that caloric restriction is essential to healthy living, I feel like is really dangerous and ignores a huge group of people that are severely under-eating and malnourished. And he does briefly acknowledge this subpopulation, but only for a paragraph, and then he quickly moves on. And I just feel like there was a lot of nuance to that conversation that he didn't really get into. A couple of things I did like in the nutrition chapter. I liked his recognition of bio-individuality and that everyone has their own set of nutritional needs. So it doesn't really make sense to push specific diets onto everyone and the general population. He also mentioned how his own personal views on nutrition have changed over time and how he's open to new ideas. So I like that. I like people who aren't so rigid in their beliefs and are willing to shift their views when new information is presented to them. Overall, I just don't know if I can recommend this book because I feel like a lot of people aren't going to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, if you know what I mean. There's good information in here and there's really bad information in here, and I'm able to discern between the two because, again, this is like what I do for a living. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm probably gonna give it a 2 out of 5 stars. I genuinely believe that some of the information in here is harmful, which is such a shame because there's so much in here that I think is really valuable too. I think probably what I'm gonna do moving forward is recommend specific chapters in this book that I think people should read. So if you're interested in picking this up, just know that chapter 11 and chapter 12, really good. So that is Outlive. I am now going to pick up Chip War. This is the book that I'm most intimidated by because it's the one that I just feel the most removed from in my knowledge. But I feel like if I have any questions, I can just ask my partner, who is very well versed in all of this. I'm actually about to fly back to my childhood home in Mississippi for Thanksgiving, so my plan is to finish this while I'm there. Okay, let's get into Chip War. Hello everyone, I am back from Mississippi. I didn't film a lick while I was there. Literally not a single clip was filmed in the state of Mississippi. But I had a wonderful Thanksgiving and I hope you all did as well, whether you were spending it with yourself or with loved ones. I don't know what past Monty was thinking, what she was saying when she told all of you that she was gonna try and finish the entirety of this book while she was at home, knowing full well that the schedule was jam-packed with family time. I don't know what she was thinking, but I'm like 113 pages into the book now, and if you are aware of the dates around Thanksgiving and you do the math, you could figure out that we are currently in December. So I did not finish Chip War in November, but I don't feel like I failed Nonfiction November because one, I read nonfiction in November, and two, I still read more than 2 books worth, and my total page count in nonfiction in November was higher than any month ever in my life. So I still count this as a success, but I do want to continue on with the vlog even though it is December because I want to, you know, follow through with reading Chip War. So let's talk about this book. Of the 3 books that I picked for this reading vlog, this is the one where I am learning the most. Because in Boys in the Boat, it was more of a literary or narrative nonfiction, so it was more about the storytelling. And then in Outlive, it was very informative, but I already knew a lot of the information going into it, so I didn't feel like I learned a whole lot. But this one is very, very dense with information, and it's on a topic that I know literally nothing about. And I've been really taking my time with this and reading it very, very slowly so that I can fully comprehend as much of it as possible. There's also been a lot of Google searching on the side to fill in the gaps and like give me a bigger picture of what the author is sharing. So this is about the microchip or semiconductor industry. You can use those terms interchangeably. If you don't know, microchips are basically these teensy tiny things that power everything in modern technology. So it's kind of wild that I didn't know anything about microchips prior to picking this up because it's such an integral part of my daily life. It's basically impossible for anyone in the modern age to survive without microchips. Like if you are watching this video right now, you are currently using a device that relies on microchips. This book covers the history of the microchip industry starting around the 40s until present day. I've learned about the inception and the development of the microchip, the key players and countries that are involved, and I think we're going to be moving forward into the current state of the industry and sort of like the geopolitical landscape as of right now. Super fascinating stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily call this book very accessible. I mean, I can understand everything that's happening, but I do have to read this book with my complete and undivided attention. I am recruiting all of my brain power to get through this book, which is honestly kind of a fun reading experience. It feels like I'm back in school, and I am a lifelong student, so for me this is really, really enjoyable. I'm gonna keep reading this, and I probably am not gonna update you until I'm finished with this. I don't really know what I would say during another midway update because I can't intelligently articulate what I'm learning about. So I'm just gonna wait until I'm done, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. If you're wondering what's going on up here, I have a severe case of bedhead, and I needed something to cover it up, so I found this hat, and I thought it was such an interesting piece of headwear that I've never put on before, so I'm running with it. Anyway, I finished Chip War, and I've got to say that this book stretched my brain like it hasn't been stretched in a very, very long time. And for that, I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't necessarily call this book beginner friendly for people who are new to nonfiction, unless you have like a really strong background in tech already, this wouldn't necessarily be my recommendation for your first nonfiction book to pick up. But if you do read a decent amount of nonfiction and this topic sounds intriguing to you, then I would definitely recommend it. Something that I forgot to mention earlier is that I really like the way that this book is formatted. I also really like the way this book feels. It's super floppy and it's just got a nice hold to it. But it is broken up into 8 parts, and each chapter is no more than, I would say, like 7 to 8 pages long. So I really like that it's broken up into these very digestible chunks because it makes it a lot more manageable for the average layperson to get through. I think ideally one would read this over a long period of time and maybe just, you know, read like a chapter or 2 a day. I think that would be the best way to read this book and fully process and understand everything within it, because it is very, very detailed. And that would probably be my biggest complaint with the book, is that at times it was a little overly thorough. I felt like the author was getting too into the weeds of everything, and that would take me out of it and I would have a really hard time pushing forward. And I feel like I personally didn't really need to delve too much into the minutia of everything to get a full picture of like what the author was trying to get across. I don't have too much to add to my content summary from earlier, other than that I now have a better understanding of the competition that exists between the United States and China in the control for microchip technology and the larger implications of who ends up winning this chip war. And obviously this book takes on a very pro-America bias, so know that going into it. I think I'm gonna rate this book a 4 out of 5 stars. This was such an educational experience for me and I really, really loved it. It's gotten me pretty excited about reading more nonfiction in the future. Like I really wanna pick up more books on topics that I know zero about and just learn. So thank you to A Book Olive for hosting Nonfiction November, because I don't think that I would have read this otherwise. And that wraps up this reading vlog. Let me know down below if you participated in Nonfiction November and what you read. If you did, if you didn't participate in the challenge, maybe just throw down some of your favorite nonfiction books that you've read. I find that the booktube space is lacking in nonfiction book recommendations, so I'm always looking for new ones. If you made it all the way through to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!